new speakers since I made it. So good morning from Rye, New York, and I'm saying good morning to Michael and Jay. By the way, you're both Michael. I will fix that in a second.
Oh,
yeah, Jay, you're Michael.
yeah. I'm an imposter for Michael this morning.
Where are you guys in the world?
I'm actually in Eugene, Oregon, which you know, I like to say it's the city that Phil Knight built. We've got the University of Oregon here, and we've got some brilliant stadiums, and we're the track capital of the world. We now have the nicest track stadium on the planet, thanks to Phil Knight. Yeah, and Mike, you're down there freezing in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, I'm in the most famous city in the world. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada. A choice I made, we moved the company in 2017 out of the San Francisco Bay Area to Las Vegas for a few different reasons. First of all, cost of living, so that we have employees that will eventually be able to survive on a salary, which is very hard to do in the Bay Area, as you know, in New York. And also because every convention, all major conventions come through, and almost everybody that's attached with anybody that would have anything to do in the blockchain industry, whether they be from an industrial side, on supply chains or pharmaceuticals for tracking of raw materials, drugs and such to use, come through Las Vegas. So it's a cost reduction for us in travel as well, in order to meet with our potential customers.
How does Las Vegas looks like during COVID? That must be a gloomy picture. I don't know. I'm trying to think of walking there with all the major hotels and all the noise and all the lights. Is it all shut?
It's not. Yeah.
Shut down, all the shows. What's the name of the big hotel that has those the water shows? I forgot.
The Bellagio.
Yeah.
So all of those things, they're still open. Some of them are only open from Thursday through Monday now, and then closed 3 days a week. Some of the larger ones. And they have a 25% occupancy. However, our governor just opened up to a 35% occupancy rate starting this week. So we'll see. It's coming back. People still come in. They come in for all of the events. Everybody from California, where they're on lockdown, takes their weekend hiatus to Las Vegas, and then returns back. So in terms of that, they're lost revenue, of course, but everybody's surviving, and people still want to come to Vegas.
Interesting. So,
which is a good thing.
I will start.
Except for the conferences. Sorry.
I will start our discussion and present you guys. So
Awesome.
I'll start with the real Michael, who's at the bottom. For me, I don't know. Actually, I'll change it in a second. I will change your name. Founder and CEO of Prasaga. Have been involved in technology sector in telecom, network, internet, software for 5 decades. Focuses on strategist, business development, evangelist, and visionary. Prasaga is his 4th startup. Started a mission to create a decentralized, open, equitable technical foundation that would allow all, everywhere, to participate on a global playing field. First endeavor to solve this was an app service provider in mid-late 90s that what we call cloud today. For the last decade, have been collaborating for international open standards for the Internet of Things to ensure the ability for anything to talk to anything or anyone, regardless of data model, protocol, platform, or provider. What he discovered was the need to decentralize the industry to ensure the citizen was in power, not large walled gardens run by FAANG.
So that would be Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google.
Okay. That is what Prasaga will deliver to the world. We'll talk about that, the foundation for all transactions, financial or other. Jay Moore, who's not Michael in any way, he was just waving, is a massively parallel entrepreneur, human connector, and industry insight merchant. One of the senior people coming from the gaming industry, and he's 25 plus years in the video game industry. Sounds like a lot of fun, by the way. He has spoken internationally, and he's a domain expert on community branding, startup ecosystem, and new ventures and strategic market planning. He has a successful record in 12 new ventures with 4 exits. Wow. Most known
Even
for
the failures were successes.
most known for being Garage Games' marketing director and chief evangelist. He helped grow a community of 250,000 game developers. Garage Games licensed the first AAA game engine for $100 and coined the term indie games and ignited the indie game movement. So it's not like Electronic Arts and all these guys that do the.
No, we're the guys that basically innovate the new. We're willing to take risks. We're not having to repeat existing franchises. So we're opening up the things like Fortnite that exists now. That all came from independent developers.
I need to do a different session with you one day about the ET game, right? I think the biggest failure in the history of mankind, right?
That we have a few of those, and I've lived through the launch of a couple that have big, massively multiplayer online games, and they're not easy. There's a lot of moving parts.
Jay believes the future will be massively improved by blockchain, empowered by AI, and driven by an economy based on reaching our full human potential. So, wow. So, something interesting I would like just to mention was, when I, in 2018, went to all these blockchain conferences to study the field, and I've met ridiculous companies. I met ridiculous I read ridiculous white papers.
Yep.
Met with entrepreneurs that basically were, PAs for somebody just a second ago, and suddenly they're big innovators. And unlike that wave, like the .com, I also remember in 2000, I saw companies that were like, but why do we need that? It just had .com to it. Now today, when you see even the blockchain, the cryptocurrency prices supported by more mature capital of institutional firms rather than just the masses or cult-like followers. Same with companies. We see, I think, more adult, mature companies with real entrepreneurs behind them. People like yourselves that are not, that have like 4 exits or a long history behind them. That's a completely different ballgame. So if you can please introduce yourselves. I gave a little bit of my just reading your bios, but tell us a little bit about what you guys, your past, and what brought you to build Prasaga and the DataGrid blockchain. And I will now use the time you answer me to fix your name, because I cannot do 2 things at the same time. I always say to my audience, I'm the best example of how incapable men are in doing 2 things. So now I will focus on changing your name.
Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, so yeah, and thank you very much, Denny, and thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate that. So again, Denny explained part of my history on there, and really what was the drive behind putting this whole thing together. I have been involved in the tech industry now for 5 years, or for 5 decades. Starting in the late 70s when my dad had one of the very first interconnect telephone companies. Which when Ma Bell got broken up and people were able to sell long distance and such. And then and moving on through and always involved in networking, in internet when the 90s started to roll around and such. It's one of the drives that I've always been, and it really started in the late 90s when I started working with a company called Quest Communications, and Quest was it was an up-and-coming fiber optic telecommunications provider, which eventually we bought US West in which was a large RBOC, the regional Bell operating systems, and at the same size as Verizon and and Southwestern Bell and such, the old AT&T breakup. And what we were trying to do was full convergence, and I was running the advanced IP team there, which was putting putting businesses in our data centers that we were building. And yeah, Denny, to your point on the .com boom, boy, I was sitting there. I remember when we first opened up our data center in Sunnyvale, California, and there was a guy running around in a chicken suit, and he had just raised $2 million for a domain called jokes.com, which had absolutely no revenue model. But just because it was on the internet, everybody was jumping into it. And I was thinking to myself, where's the value in a lot of these things are going to happen? I see the same thing coming here into the blockchain. So, to that point, why we did this, or why this started, I really started on this adventure back in the 2010s. What we started to do is, when I started to get into the Internet of Things, I saw exactly like my intro says, that we had a lot of disparity in the equitable ownership of data. And the companies that were running and creating these walled gardens, as we call them, where Google thinks that only Google Home should be the IoT stuff, and any device that only connects to them, the same as Apple thinks, the same as General Electric did it within the industrial Internet of Things, and they spent $4 billion on this great back-end system, and then they completely failed. And GE is no longer the company that you want it to be, because regardless of what they think, the customer still is going to buy equipment from numerous different manufacturers, and they expect all that equipment to be able to communicate. So that's where this whole decentralized thing came in for blockchain. The idea now is how can we create not just an equitable playing field for everybody in the world, and there really is a purpose behind this entire thing, and that's to really put the power not just for the developed countries and the first tier countries, but also for the developing countries. How can we give those in the developing countries an equitable playing field, or equitable access to a global commerce, and be able to transact on a fair and level playing field through a decentralized, fully decentralized, not a centralized organization is the only way that can really happen, where the community actually runs through governance models, one person, one vote, and all of these things are part of our mantra and our mission here to deliver. So the mission is to do exactly that. We started out to do just how do you sell your IoT data so you can, as an individual, make revenue off of it, whether it be data from your refrigerator, or from your temperature sensors, or whatever it is at your house. And what we found is we couldn't find a way to actually stabilize or create an asset-based money system without having to rely on externalities, which in order to create a stabilized coin, we don't believe that can happen. And I'll talk about that, I think, later in the conversation. So that's really what we did. We focused on not only the security and the usability, but also how to create a global method of exchange that can still be inclusive of all nations and such, but not be hindered by transaction fees and such when you're trying to do international. So that's kind of where I came from and what the mission of this organization is now.
Jay, you have anything to add on this one, or?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of talked about my background in games. My dad started me in business when I was 9. I was running a campground when I was 9 years old. So I've been doing business as if that's what everybody does for a long time. I don't even count most of the small startups I did, stamp businesses and that sort of thing. It's only the ones that actually I founded and had other people involved with me on. And probably the one place where I really found the most, well, it's how I got into the game industry, but my wife allowed me to start a company because I was banned from starting companies at one point. Called Thin Air Design, because the best ideas come out of thin air, right? And we did a lot of identity development, but we also worked in a whole bunch of different industries, whether it be, we actually helped start a theme restaurant franchise, and I learned all about franchising. Did a bunch of stuff in the power industry. We had a large building, home builder that we worked with. That's, I think, the oldest one in Oregon. And so I learned a lot about a lot of different markets, a lot of different go-to-markets, and then the opportunity to do a startup that was at international scale with Garage Games came along, and that's when I slipped out of the design firm and went over to work on this project. It had been through a company that I'd been working for as a brand manager for a couple of different projects before, so I was well established with the founders. And as I came into it, we just realized everything was shareware at that time. Nobody had the ability to bring games to market unless they paid $1 million for the license per title. And that's kind of like the Hollywood owning the cameras back in the 1950s. Nobody could make film because the studios owned the access to the entertainment. And so we decided that was the barrier right then was technology. We wanted to break down the barrier, and we took that AAA game engine. So that's the elite. It's what will make the best games on the planet, and we available sourced it for $100, and that's how we built 250,000 developers in a movement to change. Now you'll see almost all the game engines use the licensing architecture, the asset stores, all the things that we innovated in that space are now part of the way gaming works. And I see a similar moment in time where we're at with blockchain, where blockchain's still really hard. It's got a very, very extremely high barrier to developers to get involved. And the opportunity is to bring the ease of use as well as the what is right now the biggest barrier, and that's the speed of transactions. We're making blocks at 16 transactions a second in many cases. If you look at what Visa does in any second, it's in the millions of transactions. So we're not quite at scale, obviously, and that's what we've been spending the last 3 years is to try and overcome that barrier and make blockchain fully scalable. We've actually proven with our eXtensible blockchain object model, our operating system running on HyperLedger, that we're capable of doing that. And that's really the opportunity that we bring, is that nobody else has been able to overcome this. It's kind of the biggest thing in blockchain, and we're bringing that to market now. We've got the patents behind us. We've got the technology white papers, and we're bringing that out to market. Still going to be about 12 to 18 months before we get that technology in the marketplace, but there's a lot to do in that period of time that we'll be able to commercialize as well, the developers coming into the ecosystem. So now's the time for us to do the big growth push and to start to scale ourselves as a company.
If I may, please, just I think that I have to make an introduction of the other co-founder, because in our bios, I'm sure everybody's out there going, "The hell are these guys? What do they mean coding?" They've not one mention of being a developer. So quickly, our third co-founder, his name is David Bieberman. And again, he's been 5 decades in. He also has had 4 startups over his life. I think 2 were successful exits. Mine had 2 successful exits as well. So we're hitting better than a VC on Sand Hill with their 2%. David, the first program he wrote was when he was 14 years old, and he went to school with the daughter of a gentleman, Dr. Wang. And if anybody knows Dr. Wang, he had a thing called the Wang Computer Company. And David, over the course of the summer before freshman year of high school started, Dr. Wang sent him the operating manuals for the Wang OS, and Dave handed him back at the end of summer a cassette tape, because floppies weren't even around then, with something called WYSIWYG on it. And what WYSIWYG stands for is what you see is what you get. And this kind of goes along with what we're doing with the ease of use here in this blockchain. what Dave couldn't do is he couldn't write well. You know, his printed words weren't very legible. So what you see on the screen is what you get on the printer, and it eventually became the Wang, the word processor. So that was a bit, but then since then, Dave has been sitting in the mid 80s, late 80s with Vint Cerf and Bob Kuhn, and Vint Cerf is Mr. TCP. Bob Kuhn is Mr. IP. Dave is Mr. Everything above that stack. He wrote over 50 protocols that allow not the TCP/IP to be, but TCP/IP to work by writing second layer protocols and such that change from TCP to HTML and all those things. So we've got a rich history on engineering.
A big part of the internet is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. The reason there is an internet today is partly because of the work of David Bieberman. And he and I have been sitting on standards bodies for many years, writing the international standards again, on data model, on remote access, and on gateway to cloud, which would be your router up to the cloud, to any computers up there. And I'll stop.
My next question is, tell us about the mission of the project. I think you touched that point, but maybe you can add anything.
You're supposed to be that mean. Yeah, I can fill in a little bit there, Denny. I think that the mission is really what we said before, to level the playing field and allow all transactions globally to have an equal playing field. And that's easy to say, but it's very difficult to actually accomplish. But the blockchain opens up an entirely new model for how the economy can work, how we're going to interface in the future with AI intelligences. There's just an incredible amount of advancement and innovation that the blockchain opens up. I think it took me a while to live inside this space to really understand how many points of touching it does. And for me, I was like, well, okay, we already use databases for a lot of this stuff. Why do we need to have this immutable blockchain? Well, the challenge is that right now it takes human interaction between all of those technologies for things to work. And what the blockchain opens up is an immutable ledger that allows us to now have trust between two parties without there being another human involved. So you no longer need a bank, you don't need a stockbroker, you don't need any of those intermediaries to carry out transactions for you. And that goes all the way down to the ability to vote, or the ability to bring a tremendous amount of governance into the ecosystem, that now we have integrity to it, we have transparency to it. And at that point, you can now trust the fact that the government is going to have to no longer rely on corruption or graft in order to get things done, when all of that's revealed on the internet on a blockchain. And that's going to change so many things. I mean, I'm starting to sound like Tim Draper, which I think you're maybe one of the only guys that hasn't had him speak yet, but he talks a lot about this, right? He's all about governance on the blockchain. But there's also many things. I mean, we've been in discussions with all the people in HyperLedger, the people like IBM and Oracle and Accenture and SAP and all these people that are doing enterprise level. Or like Walmart's blockchain, we're tracking organic produce, or the tuna and how it's sourced. Getting all of that stuff so that there's full exposure to it. That's part of our mission. And like Mike said, we started off just to do a humble IoT message base so all the different systems could talk to each other. And now we're doing it so that all the humans can also do that, just because we found out that there wasn't a project out there that really did scale. So we had to build it ourselves.
Help our investors understand, why is blockchain such an important technology? I mean, some of our families are very, very understand blockchain very, very well, and know how to due diligence, and are very serious investors. And some of them are, I believe nowadays when things are happening again in the space, cryptocurrencies fly, PayPal are getting in, Tesla is buying, stuff's going on. Microsoft tells you about their supply management blockchain-based technology, and that I think now they're thinking, wait a minute, like with cannabis, like with .com, now we are past the phase of the weird companies, and now really those that are here are probably the more interesting opportunities. So, and the blockchain industry in general, in the beginning in 2018, there were many promises about decentralization of real estate and micropayments and smart contracts, and basically beyond Bitcoin or, nothing really worked. But now I think things change. So maybe explain why blockchain is so important and you think is an important technology we should be involved in.
Yeah, I think that the number of touch points it has in terms of technology in the amount of scope it is for the use cases, we can only deal with it in categories. I mean, financial technology, and now we've got the decentralized finance or DeFi, which is putting automated markets in place to be able to bring all the types of derivatives and properties that are currently on what we consider non-blockchain marketplaces are now being introduced into the automated. So there's no stock exchange involved. There's no centralized exchange for the marketing of tokens. It's all people putting up their own pairs. You right now can go put Bitcoin against your own token in about 20 minutes. So, there's all sorts of, from like we saw in 2018, really interesting projects to stuff that's obviously a pyramid scheme. So there's a great diversity happening in that space. Regulation technology, or RegTech as they talk about it. And we've done a lot of work in that arena because we believe the blockchain opens up the ability for people to issue their own stock and be in full regulatory compliance, for example, with the SEC or the EU or any of the jurisdictions around the planet, because those rules, those behaviors can be put on the blockchain, and those certifications that you've actually met all of those criteria can be put on the blockchain. And now with our approach, you no longer, and I think I've got a slide that says this here in a minute, but Hester Pierce said, you guys become the TSA pre-check for the regulatory use of blockchain. And that, I said, can I quote you on that? When she said it. The key there is that we're going to enable regulation to now not be something that has to happen through litigation. It can actually happen through preparation. And I think that's something that I'm excited about seeing. The governance piece we talked about with government being able to run on it. But probably more than anything, and this is probably where it touches the most, is in the enterprise space, where whether you're dealing with the auto parts supply chain, where you can go back to the metallurgical studies and certifications of what that bolt in your car looks like, clear through the autonomous car data that now goes as part of the warranty ecosystem. All of that can be integrated into one clear path all the way through the process of manufacturing to the consumer ownership, and even then obviously to the buying and selling and trading of it. So just like we now know how many times you've been in a collision, at least in the States, as a part of the record of that car, we're going to know everything that there is to know as part of the immutable record of that car. And so if something does fail in the supply chain, or something is tested and they now will know exactly where that part is in every car on the planet, and every consumer can go and check and see, gee, that thing that's blowing up the Pintos is in my car too. And I think those are the kinds of things that will help us to not only be more accountable from manufacturers to consumers, but more trustable. And it's just going to level up the lack of corruption in commerce, so that it's all transparent and exposed. And I think that's the only way, especially if we're going to have AI involved. We don't want them telling us stories and putting spin on things. We need to have those intelligences that are going to be working on our behalf to have full integrity, and I can just keep going through vertical after vertical of whether it's like Mike said, pharmaceuticals. I think we're going to talk about yachts in a minute. There's just lots of opportunity there. So it does touch every part of what we're doing. Anything that technology touches, basically blockchain will touch.
And some folks mentioned that blockchain will never realize its potential if it cannot scale to the speed of businesses. How do you see that? How do you respond to that?
Mike, you want to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the most important things. So when we first started this endeavor, we did raise $850,000 when we were preparing for an ICO, initial coin offering, in 2018. We are older, an older generation that actually has this deep need, almost unalienable need to be able to do what we say we can do. When the investors, Turian Capital out of Singapore, came to us, there was a Turian Capital out of Singapore and a family office and another investor out of Dubai that put the 850 in. When they came to us, the investors at Turian said, well, what about scale? And we didn't know what they were talking about. We thought they were talking about our technology, the message bus, the Internet of Things that moves the data from a device up to control systems and controls back if necessary, all securely, all in real time and everything. They said, no, the blockchain. Well, at that point, we had to kind of put our brakes on. And instead of raising more and going out and doing a full ICO, and we probably could have raised, based on what IOTA did and all these others, a couple $100 million at the time. But when they asked that question, then we had to know within ourselves that, yes, we can scale a blockchain. So we went into research and dev, and by January of 2019, we had designed the entire scalable blockchain and started filing our patents. And we've got 4 patents that we have filed in the United States, and with PCT, which is a patent treaty, to give us international, until we submit in each nation, protection. And that is when we were going to go ahead and start the blockchain then. And that's when we ran into the issue here about smart contracts. So the problem with the smart contract, and it all comes down to a very simple thing. There's something called Amdahl's law, A-M-D-H-A or A-H-L-S, Amdahl's law. Amdahl came up with an equation that you can use in parallel processing to figure out where you can do processes in parallel and where you will serialize. The problem with smart contracts, and every single smart contract platform out there will not scale. It because of the fact that it serializes on the individual shard. No matter how many shards they add to the blockchain, the state is all within the smart contract itself. And smart contracts are deterministic. So all accounts that have access or have assets in that smart contract. Remember, in the smart contract platform, you don't have possession of your assets. You own them, but you don't have possession because they're in a smart contract until you actually withdraw. So that also was an issue. So we saw that we weren't able to, regardless of what the scaling technology we came up with, which is brilliant, we couldn't do anything if we couldn't move the smart contract from one parallel chain, we call them parallel chains instead of shards, to another parallel chain in order to do another transaction. So that's when Dave Bieberman, again, reached back to his very first startup in 1990, and it was to write applications for a company called Go Corporation. And they had this new operating system called the PenPoint OS. And this was a tablet-based operating system. Came around as the time that Apple Newton and such were out. Again, we age ourselves very quickly in these conversations. And it was going off of, and I'm going to go just for a real quick second, it goes into something called the first class object model. This was actually introduced by Xerox PARC. Xerox PARC is a Palo Alto research center in 1972. It's a product called Smalltalk. It's also the underlying foundation for Mac OS 10. When Steve Jobs left Apple to pursue Next, he wrote Next Step. Next Step is using the first-class object model. There was a woman who was on the board of IBM, and IBM was creating something called the system object model. And that woman's son was actually contracted to build the system object model. He did that, and along the way also did something which the world hates him for, at least a lot in the tech. And he took out the first class and wrote what's called the common object model. That gentleman was Bill Gates, and the common object model is what became the Windows operating system. Just for reference, that is exactly what we did. A smart contract would be MS-DOS. Absolutely, you can run one smart contract at a time. It's all serialized, it all goes in. In Windows is multiple windows at the same time. You can do parallel processing. That's what we did. That's what our XBOM, the Extensible Blockchain Object Model, does. It moves a blockchain from an MS-DOS operating system to a Windows operating system. And now that we have all of the state, instead of sitting in a smart contract, actually sits in your account. You have a 512-bit string, which is a globally unique ID. All 7 billion people and all entities can have a globally unique ID based on 512-bit alphanumeric. Every single object that you own, every asset that you own, whether it be titled properties, digital assets, certifications in order that to certify that you're an accredited investor in any specific nation, or that you have the rights in order to participate somehow in any trades. All of that is now in your account. The state is in your account. We can move accounts from shard to shard, from parallel chain to parallel chain. That's how we solved the scale problem. Now the limit to our scale is the bandwidth of the internet itself.
You're saying that the DataGrid blockchain has a full-scale operating system, just like a phone or a computer. How does that change the future of blockchain? I believe that's where I am, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So exactly like this, and that slide, it works perfect, right? How it changes the future, and I think we've got some more depth on that slide. So what we'll do is, in order to how this operating system changes is because it does make it easy, because it builds this application framework. Now the user, as the end user, never has to know anything about the underlying blockchain. Doesn't care. It's a black box that moves data from one point to another, just like your phone, just like your computer over the internet and such. You don't have to understand the technology that's being used. You just have to know how to open that app and how to use that app. For the developer, and this is one of the biggest problems with blockchain right now, is you have to, for Ethereum, you have to code in Solidity. You have to understand Solidity. There's large costs right now because of the market for them. They're able to raise their prices, and there's a limited number of developers also. What we've done is we've created this application framework that actually allows a developer to not have to know about how to write the DataGrid blockchain, how to write a class manager infrastructure, or how to write a class or object. All they do is instantiate a class that's already written, change the parameters of that. So they say that you have class security, and under class security, stock would be one of the classes, one of the objects. So you just drag and drop this class security over to your account. And now you have an object in your account called class security. Well, you now define, well, this is a stock. This is the offering that it is, whether it be a seed, pre-A, Series A, Series B. Is it preferred share? Is it common share? How many shares are there that you're issuing? What's the price? What's the strike price that you're issuing per share? Now you all of a sudden have this object within your account under your secured global unique ID that you can offer out to the marketplace. Along with that, though, when you drag that security class over, all of the required certs and such, a requirement for that nation's securities laws in order for you to offer that, come along with it. And that is intrinsic within your account now as well. If you don't have all of the proper certifications, then you can go out and get them. And then as you do pass those and get and acquire those certifications, they become part of your account, and it's a permanent part of your account. So now you can offer out to people. I have 1 million shares at 35 a share. I'm going to go ahead and sell these. You're going to fractionalize that thing. So now, and we just wrote class fungible asset, which allows all of this fractionalization to happen. Now you write an object and said, I want to sell this. I'm going to offer this out into these decentralized marketplaces, multi-sided marketplaces. Think of an Amazon and eBay and such like that. And they go up into the Uverse or the Blockverse or whatever people want to call it. And you find these deals. Now, you're not going to quit your job in order to do this. So a lot of people are like, well, isn't this eliminating a lot of industries? No, it's not, because you still have to have a broker or somebody that's going to go out and advise you on where you should join in and what you should what stocks or what projects you should participate in. The only thing is there's no more custodialship and there's no more intermediary between the actual settlement. Difference between us and anything else, you're writing a smart contract that's going to possess the shares that you're transferring from one account to the other. In our world, you're actually moving the shares, the possession of those shares from one account to another account without having another smart contract. So possession comes up. This is really the thrust of this. How do we get more adoption? How do we make it more secure for you, the individual? How do we give you individual sovereignty, at the same time ensuring that there are regulatory controls in place? Remember, regulation is not just to protect the business, it's also protect the consumer. So that's I'll end that there.
Now we have some questions, but we'll get to it in a second because I want to continue here first and finish a couple of questions we have. So does that mean with XBOM technology, you'll have a fully scaling global network computer and one that is easy to develop for? What other issues do you see as important to getting blockchain to reach its full potential?
Jay, you want to take that one?
Yeah. Let's make sure I'm not on mute, right?
No.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I think that in addition to getting scaling to work, we need to make sure that anybody can develop, and Mike kind of touched on that, in that we've built an operating environment that allows anybody to be able to use, and we're language agnostic, so you can write in the language of your choice to build these applications. And the thing that we're working to help people understand is that all of this code that you're writing, all these class libraries, are actually running live on the blockchain, just as they would on a individual computer. They're running on the network computer that is the blockchain. And so you can actually inherit from those, and you can use those as building blocks for your application. So as more applications get built, we're seeing that you're going to get to market 100 times faster because you're not having to do it all yourself. I use the example of back when we had to build our own racks and put our own data centers in play in order to get any kind of server solutions out there. Before the cloud was in existence, we didn't have the ability to just tip up these applications in the cloud and go to market very rapidly. Now with our blockchain, you're going to be able to take your applications, use all the class trees that are already out there, put your application together and take it to market much more rapidly. And you're going to know that that's certified code, that it doesn't have malicious code running. All of that's going to be maintained on the blockchain for if you're going to actually be available. Obviously, people can do whatever they want, but if you're going to be compliant, you're going to work through the processes that we're designing so that it makes it much easier for people. That's a key. Ease of use is a huge thing. I learned that when I was at Garage Games. We did have the most powerful game engine. We were better than Unreal. And this little company called Unity came along, and they made it so it was really easy to make games. And almost all the iOS games that were any kind of sophistication, they were at the right place at the right time for all those developers to use the Unity game engine to get those games to market. Well, that ease of use beat our power. We sold to Barry Diller for a reported 70 million. I think I just looked at the market cap on Unity, which went IPO not too long ago. They're up past 41 billion. So, and they're still not actually as powerful as the game engine that we had back in 2000. So the key is ease of use and making sure that it's easy for consumers to take these applications that developers are providing, make it part of their lifestyle, make sure that the UI is very usable. Right now, it's kind of difficult. You got to get a wallet, and then you got to figure out a whole bunch of different things to be in blockchain. All of that has to kind of go away for the consumer to not have to become an expert in blockchain in order to use the technology that's running on it. And I think that's just a place of growth where we're at in this industry, where we just have to go to the next level of capacity there. So that's really important. The other thing is we need to make sure it's secure, and I think that's always a big piece of making sure that we have the right consensus algorithm that can't be hacked. Right now, we're seeing a movement away from what Bitcoin uses, which is proof of work as a model, to something called proof of stake. And we looked at that very carefully, but we also saw that there were a lot of attack vectors that anybody who's just dependent on proof of stake are going to be vulnerable. And there's going to be some really bad headlines at some point in the future when those are compromised. We didn't want to be in that situation ever, so we did a hybrid between proof of work and proof of stake. Bottom line, we get more efficiency in terms of how much power it takes to run the blockchain because we're sharing the hash power across all of the proof of stake servers, but we're also getting the security of the proof of work so that it isn't easy to compromise our system. There's a whole white paper on that, and if you have a PhD in security, I think you'll be able to jump in and really understand what we're doing there. David sits on a lot of the standards boards and is one of the experts in cybersecurity, so we rely on him to tell us why that works. But it's a part of our patent portfolio. The other last thing, and this is something I think Mike's going to get to in a minute, but I'll just tip it up for him, and that's that we have to have a currency that's not unstable or that isn't at the whim of speculation, so that the gas prices I'm paying today are $60 per transaction versus 90 cents just a week or two ago. I'm talking about Ethereum, because all of a sudden the demand for Ethereum's gotten so big that I can't get a transaction through, and sometimes I'm having to wait an extremely long time, even if I pay the premiums to get that high gas fee to happen. So we can't do commerce that way. I mean, let alone the fact that it's brain damage to try and figure out what I'm paying in ETH because it just went up, or wait, no, it just went down. How much do I have to spend? That's not a currency that people are going to use for transactions. That's more of a store of value that's used for speculation. So we built a new approach to that, and I'll let Mike talk about that in a minute. But those are the four things: speed, which is obviously the scaling, the ease of use, which is everything we're doing to make the blockchain more accessible, then security, which is making sure that it's not something that can be compromised through attack, and then the fourth thing is stability, which allows our currency to be stable enough that you can use it as a form of currency in your transactions.
So you're saying that with a fully secure blockchain that has a stabilized, a stable currency, it will now be possible to reach all the potential we've heard so much about, helping governments, identity and voting, new financial markets, safe, more accountable supply chains, new ways to transact anything digitally like cars or real estate. Do you see other applications for your DataGrid blockchain and the DataGrid token?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. And this is something, first of all, I want to make sure that I address Paz real quick in his questions, and I'll answer those live. Why not use a standard approach, which relying on second layer and goes to Ethereum and then be copied to HyperLedger? Paz, Polkadot, all of those that use Aave Labs, Stellar, all of those are based on smart contracts. That is where the failure is of blockchain. So there's a great quote that I love from Albert Einstein, and it says, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." And what that goes to is the serialization, again, of the smart contract. So what we did is we looked at not trying to, I'm going to get more transactions per second out of this smart contract. What I need to do is get settlement. I need to try to reach retail acceptable settlement so that I would be able to use a cryptocurrency to purchase a soda at a convenience store. The thing is, how long are you going to wait for that settlement to happen? Not, oh, the transaction's accepted on the blockchain, and then 24 hours later, or 1 hour later, or minutes later, it's run its course and it's fully settled, and the settlement is done. Not that they all fail. They fail at the smart contract, at the serialization. HyperLedger, boy, we've got some. The only reason we did HyperLedger because, again, if XBOM wouldn't work, if we could not put objects into accounts on the blockchain and have all state reside with those objects in your account on the blockchain, then that means we would not be able to move state from shard to shard. And we would be in the same position as every other blockchain out there. And we would then, all of this, the sharding and all of the scaling technologies, the 4 applications, patent applications that we wrote, would be moot, because there was no way to get past that. And we would just be in the same issue as everybody else. And as far as it goes with yeah, we're a fully open source. Well, we will be, right? Right now we have the HyperLedger. One of the things that we did look at doing is because we missed the ICO season by doing R&Dev and R&D, layer 1 blockchains, everybody kind of got sick of hearing the lies of it. They're all going to scale, and they don't. So the taste for that started to come out. So what we saw, the reason we went on HyperLedger was to prove out XBOM, that we could do all that. We happened to go down to the HyperLedger Global Forum, which is their large convention, in March of 2020, and showed them our first application of code for the XBOM. Right there, everything went, everybody wanted us. IBM, Oracle, Accenture, so, oh my God, you fix a lot of things here for us in the enterprise. You got to understand, enterprise, they're doing very, very simple process. Tracking something, that's it. You cannot do complex systems with smart contract. So I'll stop on that there. Jay, do you want to show the next slide? I think it's on the, so I want to first of all talk about a stabilized currency, if we could. A stabilized currency is one of the biggest issues that we have in blockchain. And what this means is that there's so much volatility. And as people have tried to create stable coins by utilizing a basket of assets, external assets, and then tying their coin to that. Well, the problem we see with that, it's the same reason that with gold. Why is gold not a standard? One of the main reasons is because we could not fractionalize gold past an atom. So if you have a finite supply of something and you can only go down to a certain amount, how do you adjust the supply or the asset in order to back the supply? What you have to look at is, okay, if the price of gold goes from $1, and this is what all of these stable coins are looking at. Say their basket, the price of gold is what the asset against. It goes from $1 an ounce to $10 an ounce. Well, you can do a couple of things. You can either increase your supply of token that you have in order, because you want to be a stable coin, you want to be at $1. Or you can remove the asset from the basket that you have. Either way, what happens then if that goes down or up? Now, are you going to pull money back or currency in circulation? Are you going to go to your users and say, hey, it's not worth $1 anymore, we got to bring it down? Or do you look at adding more asset, but do you have the reserves in order to do that, to buy more gold because you're trying to stay at $1? What we believe that the only way to do this is to actually attach the value of the currency to the rate of transaction and to the internal GDP That's right. We can measure the internal GDP, the productivity, and the price of the actual internal blockchain. Unlike smart contracts, cannot do that. We can create a what's called class commerce, and every business that opens up on the blockchain utilizes class commerce, and we can get the same metrics that the U.S. and Russia and everybody else is getting in order to calculate their GDP. What that does now is that allows us to use the monetary, the equation of exchange to create a stabilized monetary policy. What we do understand, though, is that the purchasers, the early purchasers of this token, do want to see that the value increases. So we have a plan to go over a 10 years, and it could be shorter. But we do have to be in hyperinflation because we do have to have enough token to put into circulation when necessary in order to for all the world to transact with it. So the idea is to do hyperinflation for the first few years, get somewhere around 154 billion or so token allocated or mined. And then we can now, using the equation of exchange, which is monetary supply times velocity on one side equals price plus GDP, it allows us to keep a monetary supply that's in line with the rate of transaction so that there's always a value to having the token, because if you have more supply than there is velocity, the value of the token goes down. If you have more velocity than the supply of token, then the demand for the token goes up. So there's always a value and increase. So we're expecting somewhere between 96 and 144 ROI, and that's just based on internal book value. Remember, we're old guys, we come from enterprise and such, and understand equity and such like that, right? So we're looking on an internal book value of around 144x. And then from there, we will switch over to the inflationary economy where the goal is to reach a zero inflation and with no debt on the economy. So we're not here to be a central bank and loan money to banks in order to loan money to their participants. If you want to be a bank, you're more than welcome to, but have the money that you're loaning. So where this goes now, and sorry, turn off my alarm, you can probably hear that in the back. Where this goes to now is all of these new assets, all of the accountability and supply chains and such. We have a couple of our advisors were part of the General Electric teams. One of them is Rich Phillips, and Rich Phillips was the chief architect for aviation at General Electric, setting up the supply chain and such. He actually wrote an automotive supply chain white paper for us and posted on our Medium. And what it basically it shows is how we can now audit all the way through the supply chain from raw material up to GM. So one of the instance would be General Motors has their new Caprice they're going to put out. So what they do is they go to their suppliers, and the suppliers have all the way down to the meteorological certification of certain bolts, because only certain bolts with a certain rating can go into certain parts of the car that are very safety critical. These days, people fax that over. So the supplier faxes the certificate over to the manufacturer. Well, in this world, by doing this class object model infrastructure, now GE would have the trace of all certificates would be traced all the way down the supply chain on the supplier side. And then now they can create these containment trees. And this is the Caprice containment tree. Here's every single part that was used, where it was used, when it was used. And now when it goes to the dealer, they take 500 of those. Again, go back to our fungible asset. General Motors has a Caprice Classic. They're making 500,000 cars this year. Now they're going to distribute these, so they fungible asset. We're going to put 100 over here. We're going to put 5,000 over here to this dealer. All of that information of every single car goes over with that. And now when the dealer sells, they just take that account containment tree and they move that over to the end user, the person that's purchasing the car. Now you, as a person that's purchasing the car, have access to every single certificate that was authorized and every single part that was used within your specific vehicle, so that if anything ever comes up, you have trace all the way back through to ensure that this was actually done properly. The same thing, and now when you sell the car, all you're going to do is transfer that entire car containment tree from one account to the new account. But the thing is that because there's ancestry within this entire object model, you now have that tracked all the way through. The GM knows about it, and the supplier knows that there's a new participant in here. So that's where the assets, and that's where this starts to change. And as Jason put the example up here, on the yacht is exactly kind of like where that goes. And I have to move a window real quick, sorry. So a yacht could be listed for sale on the account. Whether you want to fractionalize that and have multiple owners on it, like a NetJet kind of thing or something like that, or if you're just going to do a straight sell from one seller to one buyer. It's all within the containment tree. Every aspect of that's in there, and it's just a simple transfer of an asset now, and you don't have to worry about, do I have all the paper? Do I, is my Carfax in there? Are the Carfax accurate and such like that? So these are all things that that moving to this type of a model, having a stabilized currency that people, because the thing with currency, and again, I really go off on this, if the thing that I'm buying with will increase in value more than the thing that I'm buying, why the hell would I ever buy the thing? It doesn't make sense. The reason that there's a deflationary economies, or that depreciation in the value of the dollar, is because the idea is to get you to spend it on things that increase in value. If your dollar keeps increasing in value, you're not going to spend it. You're not going to buy that house. You're going to rent. Why would I spend something if the dollar's increasing at 100x and my house is increasing at 1x? Why would I ever buy that house, right? With that asset. So what we're trying to do is, we believe stores of value are very, very important. We're not here to knock out Bitcoin or Ethereum or anybody. We're here to be the currency that they use to buy those currencies, as well as everything else. I'll stop there.
We have some, maybe just one question that we keep getting questions here. First of all, I want to say to everybody that this will be recorded. Oh, this is being recorded. So you guys will be able to watch it later on, and we will put you in touch with Jay to answer some of your questions. I will get to some of your questions. I see that, sorry, Jim. I saw that.
No, I'm Jay. You just have me down as Jim. I wouldn't.
Oh, yeah, that's why
I wouldn't mind being Jay again, but I was Michael earlier. I can be Donald. That's my middle name as
I'm
well.
sorry. Yeah.
That's okay.
I was trying to.
You can call me whatever you want.
So Jay, I see you answering some questions. I see some we still need to answer, but I'll get to the questions in a second. So please stay with us. So let's quickly go over some other topics we talked about, Jay and Michael, before. Can you tell us more about the partnerships and consortiums that Prasaga enjoys and are there? Any new announcements in that regard? Oh,
so yeah, actually, I wanted to start with this slide because while I've been to the Industrial Internet Consortium, but while I wasn't involved with Michael and Dave when they were sitting on all of these standards bodies, we've been highly involved with them over time. And it's given us a real rich relationship with not only people that are working in blockchain, but people who are working in technology as a whole. And in the Industrial Internet of Things, or Consortium, I should say, David Bieberman helped inspire that and is highly involved with it. And as well, the Digital Twin Consortium. And if people don't know, I won't get into a lot of detail, but the Digital Twin allows us to have a cloud representation of, let's just say, an airplane and all of the moving parts on it and all of the ability to track everything visually. That is all the detail that's in the wear and tear of each part. All of that can be then modeled onto a digital twin. And it's a very important concept right now in industrial enterprise that allows for the translation of physical actual pieces and parts and automotive as well as aeronautics and lots of other applications. smart cities are having their own digital twins so that you can visualize everything in the cloud that's going on in a smart city. That whole consortium is one that we've assisted in getting to place. They're waiting until our Dave can come up from breath from building the blockchain and assist on some more of the committees that he'll serve us there. But we did this, and Mike did a lot of work here to make sure that the standards were set so that we could have an interoperable protocol that allowed our message server to work. And we're doing some of the same things moving forward to make sure that our blockchain is also in the standards body, so that we're not regulated out of existence on the SEC or the EU, not understanding smart contracts aren't the only way to do this. So we've had a lot of those discussions. And then I think that one of the more exciting announcements that we've been able to make just happened yesterday. I don't have the graphics even up. We were able to align ourselves in a partnership with a group called XBOM. And if you're in the DeFi space or the blockchain space, he's actually he actually has an entire firm of analysts and researchers, et cetera, that work with him. But he's known as the #1 trader in cryptocurrency, and has done the most with his academy to educate other people in how to trade. He also is rated the 5th best advisor to any blockchain project. So having him come alongside of our project and align not only gives us another point of credibility in the marketplace, but also gives us a kind of background and expertise that's going to take for us to navigate the DeFi space and understand how to take our ERC20 token, which we'll have until mainnet is launched, and be able to do the most with it in the marketplace while we're building mainnet. We're one of the first layer 1, I think we are the first layer 1 protocol that's actually using the DeFi markets in order to generate its funding. And we're going to do that through a Dutch auction format, similar to what EOS did a number of years ago. So that's a bit of the partnerships. There's certainly a lot more to come in that arena, but that gives you a sense of what we're doing there.
I'll go to my next question. And again, I see you guys answer some of the questions that are coming. So keep on doing that. And those that will remain, I will ask when we're done here. That sounds like a bright future where technology begins to realize more of its potential to improve our global quality of life. In what way do you see yourselves building these new ventures, and how will you look to engage private family offices?
Let me take that as well. One of the things that we're looking at building, because we are a decentralized organization, in a lot of ways we build the technology and we help maintain it, but then we basically need to come alongside and inspire the planet to be using our technology. And so we've got something called the DataGrid Collaborative, which is our full ecosystem that will engage both globally and on a localized basis. And I spoke a little bit about this at your last conference, where I took kind of a deep dive into what's kind of the bloody edge of not incubators or accelerators, but venture studios. That's a new model for being able to bring innovative entrepreneurial ideas to market much more capital efficiently. And that's really kind of a touch point that we want to have with the family offices, is that as we bring these different solutions and we identify the up and coming talent that's going to be, whether it's in Tel Aviv or it's in Dubai, or it's, I happen to have deep roots into Austin. Miami, I'm not so deep into. I've been to New York a lot, but I'm more a West Coast guy. LA, San Francisco, and Seattle are my backyards. We're going to be finding all of these new enterprises, these new ventures that are coming to market, and we're going to be wanting to partner with funds that are both local as well as global, so that you're being able to take care of the opportunity to scale these enterprises, as well as being able to do economic development in key parts around the world where blockchain is really flourishing. And these are like our top priority locations. It's not like we don't have a lot of other locations that are vying for that attention. I'm in discussion with people out of India. We're doing work in Singapore. We've actually done what we designate as full labs in both Vietnam and the Philippines. And those have ambassadors involved that are actually doing business development and helping us to build the actual ecosystem. And in each of these areas, as we build out, will become either physical locations for labs or virtual locations for labs around the planet. And of course, for those in the audience that want to make sure that we're looking at this not just for this planet, but for the moon and Mars, we're going to be a intergalactic blockchain as well. That's one of our commitments.
And that's,
So,
and that's yeah. And it's
you heard it here for the first time it's ever been claimed, but we're going to be an intergalactic blockchain.
And that's right where I can take the opportunity to market ourselves and say to everybody that you may know that we are working on a very ambitious event in the UAE under the patronage of the Ministry of Economy, with the state, the Minister of State opening, with Silverstein family as chairpersons, with the Export Institute, with the Israeli Tech Association, with INSEAD. I'm myself very much impressed with what we're doing. But no, I'm kidding. Okay, so let's continue before
Can I, if I could add just one more thing to that, and I want to tie the two things together between the standards bodies and such we're attached with and between this collaborative ecosystem. Yeah. The reason I moved down here and because of all the conventions was specifically, I signed agreements with the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology in Beijing in order to create a Smart City Research Institute. I actually wrote I'm the preface to the standard smart city guide for all universities in China. I wrote. The idea for the collaborative, and this was the problem that I was seeing in these research centers, are all siloed. You got a medical research center, you got autonomous vehicle research center, you have a mobile research center, manufacturing. Nobody's under one roof, and nobody really gets the fact that all of these systems really do need to communicate and have interoperability between each other. And we can go into stories about why the water district should communicate with the traffic system, right? So by moving to Vegas, the idea is, and this is the secondary part of this entire project, to build these large research centers, physical research centers where all of our partnerships through all those standards bodies, whether it be General Electric, Siemens, Mitsubishi, Bosch, Fujitsu, all of these have floor space within this research center, have these floors separated into different verticals, but all under one roof, utilizing our open technology, our interoperable technology for the supply chain, or for the data, and then also utilizing our blockchain in order to do commerce and such. And what this does then is allows all of those inventors, all of the entrepreneurs and innovators to be part of the entire ecosystem through the venture studios that Jay was talking about of the large enterprises. So while they're in there trying to solve the issues of interoperability, how does GE let Siemens, how do those two machines talk together, right? When they're on the same production line. If one fails, the other one has to know to stop production because it's going to just keep backing up and waste inventory. So the idea is to get them all under one roof and get the localized innovators and entrepreneurs through these accelerators, through this venture studio program, in order to come up with the projects, to come up with the ideas, and to come up with the products. And that's something that we look for all, especially within the family office and such, to participate in there. We're not here as a foundation to make money, right? We're not a for-profit organization. And so what that would be is you guys get the 7.5% ownership or shares of the accelerator, of the businesses that are coming through the accelerator and such, right? So we're looking for, how do we create this global playground that's going to be for a better world? And it's not through a social thing, it's more, how do we make a cleaner world? How do we make things run more efficiently? How do we ensure that if a water main breaks and an ambulance is on the way and about to turn on that road where the water main break, and now that ambulance is going to be stuck for 4 hours, and the person in the back, God forbid it be your grandmother, dies because they didn't get to the hospital in time. If you have a system that talks to each other And before that right-hand turn is made by the ambulance, it said, go one more block up. You're going to be 3 seconds later in the hospital, but you're not going to be stuck because of this water main break. Those are the kinds of issues that we need to solve in this world in order to do this. And that's what we are delivering.
So in both global and a local way, high net worth investors can leverage the opportunities to see exposed through the DataGrid collaborative. Beyond economic opportunity, how do you see Prasaga Foundation realizing your mission of improving all of mankind by reinventing the way we transact and trade as well?
Yep. Yes. And that's exactly, it kind of goes into what I was just talking about, right? How do we allow the person, and this is, you know, Jay and I have a few individuals that we've been speaking with that are part of our network now, and they do come from these developing countries, whether it be in Africa or in the Philippines or Indonesia and such. And we see the issues that these people are facing. You know, their generator gets stolen. So they have no light, they can't power up their laptop, right? How do we create a world where it's not about just surviving, it's about prospering? And we believe that through this entire collaborative, and the only way to do it is through a decentralized organization, through a foundation. The three of us, the founders here, Jay and Dave and I, within 4 to 5 years should have no interaction whatsoever with the management or the governance of the DataGrid blockchain. There should be nothing but a community managed on a one person, one vote type scenario. So to that point, that's what we're trying to get to. How do we give the person that is wealth so that they don't have to rely on a generator and not being stolen from their house? How do we ensure that the communities can build proper and efficient energy sources to the different houses and such, right? And that's where part of I'm going to just say real quick, we have a philanthropic part of the foundation through the tax base, and that philanthropic is exactly what we would be looking for on there.
And how does one invest with you?
Go ahead, Jay.
Token. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if everyone here in the audience is familiar with the token model, because you know, Mike and I and Dave all come from the, you know, building an equity model and having Series A seed, pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B. In the token space, it's much more about getting not so much a percentage of the company, but getting the token at the lowest price possible to gain from its increases, as well as, like, we've got a farming annualized farming bonus on our token right now that's going to generate a dividend of 9.75% annually. And those are the kinds of models we're using. So right now we're just getting completed with our pre-sale that goes out to consumers, but we're working with larger institutional investors, and we're basically looking at allocations in some cases that will go out to their network of investors, and in that case, there's some additional bonus tokens that are available to basically compensate everybody who's in the ecosystem. And then there's also the ability for us to work with them on a partnership basis, for them to have a staking mining approach in our test net, where if they really want to be involved and tip up network nodes, there's an ability for them to be participating in the pre-mining of the token before we launch mainnet. So there's a number of approaches that we can work with. Each of those are dependent on what the best interest of the investment group is. In some cases, we're just now getting started to look at those localized approaches where we'd put, you know, I don't think LP is the right word, but the funds together that would allow us to have tokenized investment into each of the labs that we're doing regionally. And that's one of the places that we plan to grow the most in this next year. And we actually kind of covet having some family offices involved with us, because they've been setting up these kind of funds and understand this stuff in a level of experience that, you know, we're good armchair venture capitalists, but we're certainly not have the experience that a lot of the family offices in the audience do. So we're looking to make those kind of alliances we don't want to try it. Again, we're trying to inspire all of this to happen. We're not trying to make it our business model. Our business model is to get a token that is fully adopted and is gaining value during the period of deflationary and is giving good return on investment to our token holders. And then at the point at which it goes from being a token to invest in to becoming a currency you buy and invest with. We expect that, you know, we're going to be bringing our community up to speed on trading, as I mentioned, with people like XBOM, so that they're going to be able to do this with any token that's out there. And we don't look to be the only player in the market. We just think that we can help solve some things, and other people can be inspired to potentially launch their own tokens on our platform as well. So that's I think the simplest way is to say, you know, we're open to proposals. We're talking to large funds, not only out of Europe and the UAE, but we're also talking out of Southeast Asia and Singapore, and even have a lot of interest coming out of China at this point as well.
And by the way, so far, who has been investing funds as well, or just families and friends? And
mostly, yeah. I mean, we just were concluding, and we had a little bit of a email challenge, which, you know, we're fully transparent on. We went into everybody's spam folders, so everybody who got passed through our KYC AML, we're having to reach out to and make sure that they understand how to invest in our token. And then the next phase is we're going to do a price discovery approach, and this is something that I'd invite everybody to watch. The biggest challenge right now in trying to launch a new token on DeFi is that you've got these bots and these whales that come in and price manipulate or make it so humans can't actually participate in discovering what the true price of a token is. But we're using something called the Balancer Liquidity Bootstrap Pool, which allows us to do price discovery. And we've got to fund the one side of that transaction, and we've got some larger institutions that have asked us to wait on that until they can come in, and we're finishing up those deals right now. And the rest of it has been, you know, I think we published last night, and then we've got a lot more this morning, but we published that we've raised about 120,000 from just small individuals that have come in from our community that want to come do this.
Yeah, that was actually out of 320 that have gone through KYC, actually done the whole process, except for the price, the address verification. That seems to take a little time in order to get done. But there, AML, KYC, and everything is done, right? The only reason for the price for the address verification is there are some banks that require the address verification. It's not for any national regulatory or anything. KYC, AML's passed, 320 passed, 44 so far have contributed or purchased DGT out of the 320 that have passed. And like Jay said, we've had a problem with going to the spam filter. So we're rectifying that issue right now, excuse me, in order to get the rest in. So there is still opportunity coming into pre-sale.
so, first of all, it's been very, very interesting. You know, we've been going for an hour and a half, and most people are still with us, right? The average time of our webinar is 30 minutes. So I think it shows something about you guys. And I think you got a great background, Jay. I mean, just trying to figure out how many items I see there on the top one is very exciting. But let's go through some of the questions here. So for one person writes, good luck, an alternative Ethereum chain is needed. Another one, jurisdiction-wise, what are the benefits of being based in Nevada? What government programs are helping scale the technology, specifically Nevada's Sandbox program? Yeah,
so everything is going to be a Swiss foundation, and we're right now, our token sale is being run out of our Estonian organization, dgblabs.io. Because I cannot do a pre-sale here in the United States. I cannot allow US citizens to participate. They can in a DeFi, but not right now in the pre-sale, because we are US citizens. So we're doing everything that we can to try to keep out of the view of SEC, even though we talk to SEC regularly, as well as CFTC and the European commissions on regulatory technology and such like that. So Nevada, though, is very, very important. Las Vegas is very important to the entire enterprise world again. Almost every single company comes through Las Vegas at least once a year for a convention. So everybody you see, everybody that you need to see is probably here at one point or another. That's where the real interesting thing about the research center that we're looking at setting up here, the first one, is because now you can take your customer from the convention center just a little ways away. And we'd love to talk to people about this because we're looking for how do we transport through EVs and such like that, you know, make it total, like a real smart city type experience. But now you can take your customer over and see the machines that you're talking about in the production line actually working, right? They may not be producing items that are going, but you still have a sample of this is a company called Jabil. And Jabil is the third largest contract manufacturer, outsourced contract manufacturer in the world. And they set up these centers, and the first one was up in San Jose. We're tied in with Jabil through the IoT stuff. But you can go in and you can see they have full production lines, all the machines that they have in production line lined up. They're not producing anything, but they're running, right? And they show the operation and such.
Michael, we have a couple of more questions, so I really need you to try to answer as short as you can because
I will.
No, just now because we're an hour and a half into this. I.e., we already have a synthetic warranty in this example, methods to transfer value between purchases documented in a way that works for the seller manufacturer. How is the fundamental value improved by moving this value proposition exchange method to the blockchain?
So this is what the problem is. And like we stated, right now, biggest issues in there is everything, a lot of these certificates and such are done by fax, right? There is no digital representation, especially when it can be secure. And I see what Rob asked about, you know, the Caprice example and such like that. I'm looking at his question. GM, it's not that they're sharing the information. I know there was one that came up earlier about ZK, and ZK does zero knowledge. There's also one other piece, and I'm sorry ZK doesn't hide your state though. That doesn't cover your data. That just does a zero knowledge, and it's going to pass, but your state still shows up on the blockchain. There's one other piece that does disguise your state, so nobody sees exactly what the state of that transaction is. They just know that the transaction happened. We already have class ZK built. Any object in your account you're going to be able to wrap in class ZK, and now you can do that transfer anonymously. And then to the other thing about what was I looking at that also was in there, the optimized chains with connected standards connections. Yeah, that is again something that we can wrap any coin, and you can use the DataGrid blockchain to make that transfer of the coin for lower fees. Again, these are objects, so all you're doing is taking your ETH, you're adding an ETH object into your account, and you're wrapping that. You're wrapping it in the DGT, using the DGT to go. So where our optimization came through the IoT and through IoT was through using a protocol called XML, Sensible Markup Language, and XMPP, a Sensible Messaging and Presence Protocol. That allows the interoperability between anything, any device, any human, any system. So yes, we did optimize that. For NFTs, wait till you see what we got for NFTs. And Jay, I don't know what he wants to say about that, but there's some interesting things going on.
I think we've done a great job of bending everybody's ear, and I appreciate everybody's patience. There's always going to be more questions, and we want to have these discussions. So I've gone ahead and put up some of the places where we're doing that, like in Telegram. I'm a lot on LinkedIn these days, as I see Denny there all the time, but also just by reaching out to us through email and having a conversation there. So yeah, you'll find that this isn't something that we can probably even cover in an hour and a half, even though we have gone pretty deep on our technology, and I appreciate everybody's patience staying with us. But again, the key is, while we're an ambitious project, we're also some very tenacious, like old guys, I'll just say, and we're bringing in a lot more younger people that are going to be driving a lot of the individual working parts of this. But we've actually done all this on paper, and we know it works. And there's obviously things like adoption and getting the community built and all that. I've got some experience doing that. We're going to bring in a lot of other people that are highly experienced at getting that scale to happen. And that's the key, is to get people to actually be able to succeed using our blockchain. And that for us is really the bottom line. We need to recruit the family offices to be part of that movement, because the amount of capital that's tapped into in the family world is substantial. And I know that in many cases, it's not just for profit, it's for purpose that many offices invest. And that's really what we're looking for, is people who understand the purpose that we're trying, the mission we have, and would like to align with that and assist us in making that a reality. So that's my ask. Is it's not even so much just to invest in our technology and be part of it, but to be part of our entire ecosystem and align with that. That's where the long-term value of purpose-driven investors are highly valued to us.
Jenny, can I jump in one quick time and answer George here?
Why,
I just want to answer George.
I've
got to answer George. This is really important. Absolutely, George. Yes, we can create a
People don't see
COVID vaccine.
the question, Michael. So if you can just explain what you're.
Yeah, so George asked a question. Could this be used to create a COVID vaccination record expected to be used in the creation of a travel passport? That is exactly what this account system through the object model does, all anonymously. We don't believe that they have to know your name, your address, your phone number, your date of birth, your social security, or whatever national ID number you have. They just have to know that you have the right to do this. You have complied with all regulatory needs in order to do any transaction globally, whether it be travel and such. So yes, this absolutely does. It becomes an object in your account, and it's always there. And then when you go and scan your unique ID, your QR code, it's just going to say, this person, this individual does have the right to do it. It complies with all regulatory without knowing who you are. So thank you for asking that.
So we have actually a panel about NFTs. You mentioned that at our next blockchain cryptocurrency conference, which is March 3rd, I hope, maybe I'm wrong.
I saw online.
Yeah. So we had the first one a couple of weeks ago. The next one is March 3rd. So we'll discuss NFTs and all of that. So first of all, I would like to thank you. It's been very, very interesting. I would like to mention to everybody that this week, our second session is on Thursday with an Israeli company. You know, Israel has some interesting companies coming out of Israel. Cancer. We'll be talking about dealing with cancer, quality of life. An interesting company called Izun Pharma, and we'll be talking to Dr. William, I forgot his last name, on Thursday, but don't tell him I forgot his last name. It's just because I'm trying to, I have different screens open here. No, I just did a post about him today. I will also share with you that what's coming next on April 22nd, we'll be doing, hopefully, an event at the World Trade Center with our good friends from the Silverstein family that owns it and always allows us to use the rooftop. So that makes it a safe event, safer than going to Costco at least. And in June 15th, again, provided COVID will be at a better place by then, as I've mentioned, 3 days in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So that's going to be a very, very exciting as well. So join us on Thursday, and I will, you guys will be able to watch this. We'll send you the recording of this session, and Jay will send me and Michael what kind of information you want me to send everybody, and that's what you guys are gonna get. And it looks exciting. Fantastic presentation from Bijan. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I would like to say one thing if I could, and that is everybody in the pre-sale. One of the things that we just did announce on Friday is we finally got our farming program put together. We are going to be paying a reward of a farming reward of 9.75% on everybody while their tokens are locked during the pre-sale for 90 days, and as long as they keep the DGT in the pools after the unlock.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you. And it's Dr. William Levine. So just for the record, Thursday.
I'll look forward to his session then.
We'll talk about enhancing cancer therapy with improved quality of life. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I see another Q&A or no. And we will hopefully see Jay and Michael in person in New York, in the UAE, in other locations in the States, and online. So thank you, and Jay, I'm very happy we got your name right. At least
well, you forgot the.
Call me Ray. You can call me Jay. I'll answer to
Usually
whatever.
it's the Jay Moore, Danny.
Yeah,
and it's a very easy name.
There's a joke involved with that. So
yeah.
No, it's a great name for a huge performance. You know, Jay Moore live at the.
Yeah. You get more with Jay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Michael, we'll be in touch.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.